All he had to show for it was a busted lip and an empty gun. He had hoped to get some sort of resolution, but there was no talking to his father when he was drunk, which was always. Sean surveyed the room, too numb to react appropriately. There was blood sprayed on the walls, and everything that was once neatly tucked away on the shelves was thrown about the room. Slumped in the far corner was the man that raised him, the man that gave him life, dead. Sean Savage had a rough relationship with his father after his mother died when he was 11. He was the eldest of 6 children, and a lot of the paternal responsibilities fell to him, even at that young age. Sean tried his best to make things appear normal, but his teachers noticed when he came to school with bruises and black eyes. His father burned through the money his mother left her children, so Sean often sacrificed a meal for the sake of his younger siblings. He sat down on the floor amongst the broken glass and blood-stained books. He touched a finger to his split lip, sending pain racing from his right shoulder to his brain. With the adrenaline haze fading, he pulled off his t-shirt to expose a 6-inch gash in the fleshy part of his right shoulder. Sullivan Savage called him, wanting to talk about reconciling with his children. Out of the 6 he had, only 5 were alive. Sean's younger sister and second eldest child was a crack-addicted prostitute who wanted nothing more than to run away from the chaos that was her family. It was her death in a dank alleyway that inspired Sean to become a police officer. He had 2 brothers in college and 2 sisters that lived with him. His twin sisters were seniors in high school and both star athletes. He was expecting them home from volleyball practice at any moment and had no way of explaining the state of their living room. He limped to the cordless phone and dialed 911 to report the incident. He was stunned by what he saw when he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror over the phone. He had deep red marks on his face and clear handprints on his neck. He touched his swollen jaw and found it slightly out of alignment. He looked down and found that he still had his service weapon in his hand. Immediately, he ejected the empty clip and disengaged the slide and left it on the table near the phone. He made his way to the kitchen where he retrieved some plastic cups. He struggled to cover the 17 shell casings that were scattered over the room and preserved as much evidence as he could before the police arrived. The first lights appeared shortly after he finished. Sean collapsed to the floor in front of the front door and waited for the officers to make entry. The first through the door was his partner, Clark Bryant. Sean didn't have the energy to speak. With the combination of severe blood loss and adrenaline fatigue, he could only point over to the dead body of his father. Clark was more concerned with the state of his friend than the corpse in the corner. He guided in the paramedics who immediately tended to the wound in his arm. From behind the wall of people that formed in front of him, Sean heard the panicked cries of his sisters. He tried to call out to them but was blocked from moving by the medics working on him. He forgot temporarily that he was severely injured and wanted nothing more than to protect them from the horror that was their home. Christina and Cameron Savage found their brother surrounded by medics laid out on the floor. They were dressed in matching volleyball uniforms with knee-high socks and black sneakers. Their skin was pale and their faces were locked in a state of shock. Christina knelt down next to her brother, holding onto his hand as medics wrapped a pressure bandage around his shoulder. "Sean, what happened?" Christina asked breathlessly. Sean couldn't form the words. His voice kept catching in his throat as he tried to speak. The tears in his eyes were enough to tell the story. She gave his hand a reassuring squeeze as they lifted him onto a stretcher and took him to the waiting ambulance. Clark led the girls to his car, and they followed behind to the hospital. The room was dark and cold. A faint light from a small lamp shone just enough to illuminate Christina and Cameron sleeping together in the recliner next to his hospital bed. Sitting in the corner with his head in his hands was Clark. Sean wanted to make a move to let everyone know he was okay, but his muscles were too heavy. He managed a moan that caused Clark's head to snap up. "What do you need?" Clark asked intently. Are the girls okay? They're sound asleep over there. They were more worried about you than anything. I had to, Clark. I didn't want to, but I had to kill him. We don't have to talk about it right now. Rest, because the detective from Internal Affairs will be here in the morning to talk to you. I don't want to talk to them. I want to talk to you, Sean said, holding on to his friend's hand firmly. All right, Clark said, returning to his chair. My father was an asshole, even before my mother died. She took the brunt of the abuse to protect us. The only friend my father had was a bottle of Jack Daniels, and that was his best friend in the world. I was left to raise 5 children on my own when I was just a kid myself. My sister Clara ran away when she was 17. They found her body a year later, covered in track marks, dead of an overdose. I got called out of my class freshman year to identify her body. I left the morgue and applied to the academy that same day. I vowed to do anything to keep the rest of my mother's children safe. Sean paused for a moment, tears stinging his eyes as he watched the twins sleeping. I had just gotten home when my dad came over to talk about taking the girls back home with him. He told me that he had cleaned up his act and he was doing much better. It made me sick to think about them alone in the house with him. He sat down and told me that he was going to take them and that there was no room for discussion. When I told him no, the monster I knew reared its head. He jumped up and punched me in the jaw. When I squared off against him, he grabbed me by my neck and pinned me against the wall. I did everything I could to keep him away from me. I threw books, lamps, plates, anything I could get my hands on before he pulled the knife on me. Where did he get the knife from? It was in my knife block in the kitchen. I don't know how, but we ended up there. I ran for my holster that was on the coffee table when he stabbed me. I didn't even feel it because I was in survival mode. I don't know what my dad had taken, but the first shot didn't put him down. Where was that? I shot him in the leg. I honestly don't think he noticed. Did he still have the knife in his hand? Yeah, he just kept after me, so I closed my eyes and pulled the trigger, and didn't stop until I was out of rounds. That's when I realized what happened. He staggered over to the corner and died, and that's when I called it in. So he's really dead. He's not gonna come back for us, ever again. Neither Clark nor Sean noticed that Cameron was standing at the foot of the bed. Christina was sitting in the recliner, hugging her legs against the chill of the room. The look in their eyes broke Sean's heart as they pleaded with him for it to be true. For the second time that night, Sean couldn't speak. He's gone. He won't be around to hurt you guys anymore. The twins squeezed into bed with Sean, careful not to pull on an IV or put pressure on his wounded shoulder. Christina wiped away a tear that fell from his eyes and kissed his cheek gingerly. Clark said his goodbyes and stood to leave the room. If there's anything that you guys need, just let me know, he said as he walked towards the door. I'll be back to work before you know it, so don't get too comfortable with your new partner. I won't, I promise. And I'm sorry for your loss, guys. Don't be, Christina, Cameron, and Sean said in